We are midway through the 2025 NFL season, and in today's video, we will be going back and grading every head coach midway through their first year with their new team. The biggest thing that we will hammer home in today's video is context is key, because I don't think it's fair for Kellen Moore and Aaron Glenn to be on the same grading scale as somebody like Mike Vrabel, who entered the season with Drake May as a starting quarterback, compared to a combination of Justin Fields, Tyrod Taylor, Tyler Shuck, and Spencer Rattler. Now, Mike Vrabel has obviously done tremendous things with the Patriots in 2025, and we'll certainly dive into that whenever the Patriots and Mike Vrabel comes up, but I did want to preface that context is key with every grade, and that is a point that will be hammered home in today's video. And there is a lot to break down in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing Liam Cohen of the Jags. The timing of this video isn't ideal for Liam Cohen specifically, as at the time of this video release, the Jags have lost 3 of their last 4 games, and most recently, lost to the Texans in a game against a backup quarterback in which they were outscored 26-0 in the 4th quarter. Now, just because the Jags have lost 3 out of 4 games does not mean Liam Cohen's grade is going to be bad automatically due to this, because what should be remembered is there were some positives in the first few games of the year. They beat the Texans at home, they beat the Niners in San Francisco, and of course, beat the Chiefs on Monday night. And while those were good wins, I do have some questions with Liam Cohen's unit that I think directly goes back to Liam Cohen himself. And to be completely honest, I know Trevor Lawrence can be a hot topic depending who you ask, but he really doesn't have anything to do with Liam Cohen, at least pertaining to his grade in this video. Where I think Liam Cohen and the coaching staff deserve some criticism is the plan they had for Travis Hunter prior to him getting hurt. It was recently announced Travis Hunter's season is over, and that is obviously unfortunate, and we of course wish him the best in recovery. I also fully understand and acknowledge that Travis Hunter was not going to be a first-team All-Pro at both positions in his rookie season, but I did not like how every touch he had felt forced offensively, and that we didn't get to see the best version of him on either side of the football. And not only that, but on the 14-yard Davis Mills go-ahead touchdown in Week 10, you saw 2 of the Jags' best players in Josh Hines-Allen and Devin Lloyd really dog it on the biggest play of the game, which to me goes back on coaching. And the Jags had a chance to beat the Texans in Week 10 and ultimately failed, but also looked really bad in the process. And the reality of this situation is the next few weeks, with how they respond, in my opinion, are going to be very telling regarding the future of Liam Cohen. And right now, I think this grade is a C+. Now, with Kellen Moore of the Saints, the biggest thing we prefaced in the intro was trying to maximize the talent you have on the roster and get the most out of the situation you're in. And it's not a secret that the Saints entered the 2025 season in a rebuild. Everyone knew it. And there was fear from Saints fans that they were going to get a C- or D+ candidate as their head coach simply because nobody would want the job. And also the fact that they had the 9th overall pick in the 2025 draft, and that this quarterback class was unfortunately nowhere near where the 2024 quarterback class was. And in 10 games so far in 2025, the Saints have put up more than 20 points just twice, which I do think is about what should have been expected with this team. Now, at the time of this video, the Saints are coming off of a huge 17-7 win over the Panthers in a game where Tyler Shuck looked good, and the offense looked, at least in my opinion, maybe outside of a game here or there, the best they have all year. But even though the Saints are coming off of a win, and this was acknowledged as a rebuilding year, does not mean Kellen Moore has been perfect in a bad situation. There's been times where his clock management has not been good, and the play calling has also been hit or miss too. And I don't know if this is Kellen Moore getting in his own head about being conservative because he knows he doesn't have a great roster, or if this is what we should expect from him in 2026 too. And strictly from a play calling standpoint, I thought he was a lot more creative during the 2024 season with the Eagles than he has been in New Orleans. Obviously, we know about the talent discrepancy between the two, but in addition to the roster going through its ups and downs, I think Kellen Moore has 2 in the first half of his first year, and right now this is a C. And before we continue, today's video is sponsored by PrizePicks and my code GFB. We had a play go 2 for 2 last week, shout out Lad McConkey and Pat Fryermuth, and we're looking to have a play go 3 for 3 this week, and that is again with the season-long partner of the channel, PrizePicks. And with my Week 11 lineup, we are keeping it simple. Pat Freiermuth has been getting more involved in the offense over the past couple of weeks, and he's a reliable target, and I think it's going to continue. So I like Pat Freiermuth more than 24.5 receiving yards in Week 11, and one of the games I'm looking forward to most in the entire 2025 regular season, that could also very easily be an NFC Championship game preview, is the Seahawks and Rams in Week 11, and because of this, we are taking Matt Stafford and Sam Darnold each more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. And when you sign up on PrizePicks using code GFB and make your first $5 deposit, PrizePicks will give you $50 in lineups instantly. Once again, when you sign up on PrizePicks using code GFB and make your first $5 deposit, PrizePicks will give you $50 in lineups instantly. And a big thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. Aaron Glenn of the New York Jets is up, and this is one of the more difficult coaches to grade from this cycle for a few reasons. The Jets, at the time of this video release, are 2-7, and they play the Patriots the night of this video release, so there's a very real or strong chance they're 2-8 through the first 10 games of Aaron Glenn's tenure. And obviously, winning 20% of your games is not going to cut it long term, but when you look at the Jets roster, even pre-Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams trade, were they ever going to win the Super Bowl this year, whether the head coach was Aaron Glenn, whether it was Sean McVay, Andy Reid, Vince Lombardi, whoever? No, and that's what has to be remembered. Now, there are a couple of things that I think will bring down Aaron Glenn's grade inevitably, and a couple of those things are the bad clock management, which we've seen throughout the first half of the season. Obviously, the one that comes to mind most is the Denver game from across the pond back in Week 6, in which the Jets had the ball with 37 seconds left. They completed a pass for 6 yards, and then they were around midfield, and it was 4th and 1, and they decided to let the clock run out to halftime. They didn't even take a chance at a Hail Mary, which we can probably acknowledge would not have been completed, but it was the fact that they just let the clock run out in a game that they would go on to lose by 2 points, which was a very bad decision. And most recently, Aaron Glenn took a timeout with a little over 2 minutes against the Browns, which was not a good decision. So there have been some very poor in-game management decisions from Aaron Glenn, but there is also the rationalization that this is not a good roster, that even if they win the Broncos game, or even if they win the Panthers game and they're 4-5, probably 4-6 after the Patriots game through the first 10 games, that I kind of ask the question, does it really matter pertaining to the long-term outlook of the New York Jets with Aaron Glenn as their head coach? And where I do cut Aaron Glenn some slack is his starting quarterback is Justin Fields, which at this point is a net negative for the New York Jets. I mean, they just played a game in Week 10 against the Browns, and he finished the game with 54 passing yards, 42 of which came on one play. So if you can't throw the forward pass in 2025, I mean, you're going to have problems. But where Aaron Glenn has improved over the course of the 25 season, at least in the first 9 to 10 games, is penalties have gone down with the Jets, which I think can only be viewed as a positive. Michael Clemens was kind of a meme there for a couple of weeks where he would commit a very stupid penalty, yet has not committed a penalty in almost 2 months, which again is a positive and a trend in the right direction. But whenever your quarterback is struggling to not throw the deep ball 40 yards downfield, but complete a pass, you are going to be put behind the 8 ball from the start. And there is some criticism that Aaron Glenn deserves for not putting in Tyrod Taylor in a couple of games, but whether your quarterback in 2025 is Justin Fields or Tyrod Taylor, your ceiling is going to be limited. So I do think from the start of this that Aaron Glenn's grade was always going to be capped off probably at a B or a B+, mainly because I don't think anything above that would have been achievable, at least with this roster, but I do think there have been a couple of signs of improvement over the past couple of weeks. And what I think should also be remembered is the Jets' number 2 receiver, meaning not Mason Taylor or Breece Hall, but actual number 2 receiver on the roster, is Tyler Johnson, who still midway through the season, or even more than midway through the season at this point, has less than 200 yards receiving. He has 2 games with 60 yards receiving, and other than that has been pretty much a non-factor. So when you look at the roster and when you look at everything that, or the hand that Aaron Glenn was dealt, it certainly hasn't been great, and that would be an understatement, but I do think there are some positive things to go off of. And one of my biggest frustration with Brian Callahan of the Titans was that the Titans were obviously a bad team, but they were also an undisciplined team, and they would commit stupid penalties week after week after week, and that was why I was so frustrated with that team. But with the Jets, you can at least start to see a trend in the right direction, and with Aaron Glenn, obviously his first-year record is going to be bad, we know that, but if this team does not improve by the end of the 2026 season, season, then I think it would be time to move on, because the Jets do have a lot of first-round picks in the next couple of years. But all things considered, with the Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji pairing, because you also have to factor in that Aaron Glenn has a lot of say in roster moves because he was hired before Darren Muji, and it is implied that he has a lot of say over the final roster. The Jets are doing a lot of things right. Armand Membu, home run selection. Mason Taylor looks to be a good pick as well. Azareye'h Thomas is a player that I think will be good over the course of time, and they just traded Quinn Williams and Sauce Gardner, which in terms of the long-term outlook of the Jets was the right decision, because they are not a player or two away from seriously competing. So all of this factored in, I do think Aaron Glenn's grade through the first 9 games is a C. Mike Vrabel of the Patriots is up, and to me, this is everything I'd want in a head coach. He is a leader of men, and guys give everything they have and then some whenever they're playing under Mike Vrabel. And there was a clip after the big win they had over Tampa in Week 10 where Mike Vrabel was personally addressing every player before they got into the locker room.
You okay? Come on. Good job, bud. Come on, Hunter. Earned it. You earned being tired. Good job, Jimmy. Get to work, Hawk. Great job, man.
Saying things along the lines of, hey man, I really appreciate your effort. We're very lucky to have you. We couldn't have got here without you, that type of thing. And to me, those are the little things that go a long way. There was also a really cool photo of Mike Vrabel with Demario Douglas's family after the game. And Mike Vrabel, to me, is a leader of men and the exact type of guy you want leading your football team. And I don't think it's a coincidence the Patriots have had the success they've had this year. And I did send out a tweet before the season that I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots were 6-2 through the first 8 games, and that was due to a combination of Mike Vrabel, helping improve the team, but also because of how easy the Patriots schedule is compared to other teams' schedules. I admittedly thought they were going to lose in Buffalo earlier in the year, which, credit to the Patriots, they won in Buffalo. Stephon Diggs had a tremendous game in his return to Buffalo, and this is what we've come to expect from the Patriots after starting out 1-2. They've won 7 in a row, and like we said, they play the Jets the night that this video is released, and I think we would all be surprised if the Patriots trip up and lose that game. And with the Bills losing to Miami in Week 10, with the Patriots remaining schedule they have, as long as they don't collapse, I think we would all be pretty surprised if the Patriots don't win the AFC East in Mike Vrabel's first year as the head coach of the New England Patriots. I'm also not surprised to see Drake May have the success that he's having in year 2, and one thing that I do want to clarify is Drake May himself is obviously a really good player. I do not want to say or imply that because Mike Vrabel is the head coach, Drake May is now a successful quarterback. That would be really disingenuous to Drake May and the work that he's put in and the progress that he's made as a quarterback, but I'm not surprised to see Drake May have the success that he's had with the trio of him, Josh McDaniels, and of course Mike Vrabel, and I do think that this is going to be the floor of what Patriots fans should expect for the next couple of years. Now, the Patriots may fall off in the win column in 2026 because they're going to face a more difficult schedule next year than they will this year, but with where this team is and with where they're performing, I think a lot of it can be attributed to Mike Vrabel leading the team, and I also don't think it's a coincidence the Titans have fell as far as they have once Mike Vrabel was out of the building, and not surprisingly, half a year in, the Mike Vrabel grade is an easy A+. Brian Schottenheimer is up, and I'll be honest, when this hire was made, this was one of, if not my least favorite hires from this cycle. And for clarity, with who his old man is, the legendary Marty Schottenheimer, I didn't think this was a nepotism hire or anything like that. I just thought it was a bad process from the Cowboys to take a coach who was the OC that didn't call plays in 2023 and 2024, and more or less make him the head coach and say, here you go, good luck. And there's obviously been a lot of ups and downs throughout the 2025 Cowboys season so far, but for Brian Schottenheimer specifically, I think he's been fine. And the big message of today's video is context is key, and it's not his fault the defense is as bad as it is from a roster standpoint. The defensive play calling at times has been bad, and sure, you can say that Schottenheimer should overrule defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, but I'm not bringing his grade down strictly due to that. The offense, which was his calling card, is top 5 in the NFL in points per game, and there's a very real reality. They have a 1,000-yard rusher in Javonte Williams and 2 1,000-yard receivers in George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. And whether you are a Cowboys fan or not, to at least be fair to this grade here, we have have to acknowledge how much of a disadvantage the Cowboys were put in when they decided in August, 1 week before the season started, to trade away a Hall of Fame talent in Micah Parsons. And for reference, Parsons is one of 2 players to have 12 sacks in each of his first 4 seasons. The other was Reggie White. So inevitably, that was always going to impact the 2025 Cowboys season. And I know Jerry Jones has his faults, but I do like their 2025 rookie class, and I think the only place you can go from here is up. And through half a year, the Schottenheimer grade is a B. Now, personally, over the past few days, I cannot stop saying good, better, best, and that's because of one man, and that's Ben Johnson. And the Chicago Bears at this moment in time are 6-3 and are coming off of a double-digit come-from-behind win over the New York Giants and are 6-1 in their last 7 games. And I think there is a conversation to be had that they shouldn't have been in the position they were in against the Bengals, and even the Giants game for that matter too, but any Bears fans would have taken 6-3 through the first 9 games of the Ben Johnson era, period, and especially with how it started out. The Bears season started off with not 1, but 2 division losses, as the Vikings came back from down double digits in J.J. McCarthy's NFL debut, and then the Lions put up 52 points on the Bears defense in Week 2. And like how we were fair with Brian Schottenheimer with the Cowboys defense, the Bears defense is also not good at this moment. They've also been injured throughout the year, but they haven't been good either, and both things can be true. But my 2 biggest things with the Ben Johnson hire was establishing a culture that, quite frankly, has not been seen in Hallis Hall in maybe decades at this point, and the other is the progression of quarterback Caleb Williams throughout his second season. And the culture has clearly been established, and it's proven every single week, but Caleb Williams has looked a lot better in 2025 for the most part too. He did have a few game stretch where things weren't great, specifically between the Vegas and Baltimore 4-game span, but he's rebounded nicely the last 2 weeks, and I know he only completed 55.6% of his passes against the Giants, but a lot of those incompletions were drops, and the fact Chicago is even in a position to be in the playoffs to begin with is, in a lot of ways, due to Ben Johnson. It hasn't been perfect, but midway through the year, this is an A. Pete Carroll of the Las Vegas Raiders is up, and this is a complicated discussion for a couple of reasons. Whenever you look at this team's roster, you can pretty quickly tell this is not a good NFL roster, but there's also been an underperformance from this roster, which goes directly back on coaching. I know a lot of Raiders fans are rightfully so frustrated with Chip Kelly, and there's also a lot of Raiders fans that are frustrated with Geno Smith, and then there's also Raiders fans that are frustrated with the team's performance due to Pete Carroll being the team's head coach. Now, when this team started out 1-0 with a win over the Patriots, I thought Geno Smith looked pretty solid in that game outside of the 1 interception. I thought the interception was a bad read by Geno back in Week 1, but you know what? 1 ball a game, it happens. Not every player is going to be precision where they have 3 passing touchdowns to 0 interceptions every game. Little did I know that that was going to be a sign of things to come, and that Geno Smith would eventually have more interceptions than touchdowns, and that he would significantly underperform relative to the player he was expected to be heading into the year. That is a bit of a wild card I didn't expect with the Raiders in 2025, and I think anybody that thought Geno Smith would fall off from Seattle to Las Vegas, they are somewhat justified, but I don't think that they would have thought that Geno Smith would have fell this far. Now, having said that, there's been an underperformance from several other players too. The defense, really outside of Max Crosby, is a hodgepodge of who's who on the Raiders defense, and I would question, if you are not a Raiders fan, how many Raiders players can you name from this defense, because there are a laundry list of former big names, Jamal Adams and Devin White of course being the most notable, but this is a secondary that is a bunch of no-name guys, and whenever you are in a division with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Bo Nix, you are already at a disadvantage, let alone with a corner room that is not good, and you're also at a disadvantage whenever your offensive line is not just below average, but really, really bad, and you spent the 6th overall pick on a running back that has absolutely no offensive line blocking for him to begin with. And what I think makes the Pete Carroll grading a complex discussion is the fact that there's a lot that goes into this. It's not just, hey, the Raiders stink, let's just give Pete Carroll an F and move on, because the roster that he inherited was not good. And it also doesn't help that the Raiders offensive line has significantly underperformed, which right now makes the Ashton Jeanty selection look a lot worse. And also the Jack Bech situation, which is really weird, and that was a player the Raiders spent a 2nd round pick on that I think is one of the bigger draft busts so far from the 2025 2025 classes. I thought Jack Bech could have came in and been a 600 to 800 yard receiver along with 5 to 7 touchdowns, and he hasn't been anywhere close to that type of player. But there's also on the other side of this to basically say that, hey, this roster isn't good, therefore we shouldn't have expected many wins to begin with. But the Broncos game in Week 10 was a game the Raiders could have, and if we are being completely honest, should have won. Pete Carroll, I think, also deserves some criticism for routinely putting Geno Smith back into the game, despite him very clearly not being 100% or close to 100%, but then there's another discussion even on the other side of that to say, well, if they put in Kenny Pickett, how much really changes? And I think we can all agree that not much would have changed, and I'm definitely not saying that if they put in Kenny Pickett, they're all of a sudden going into Arrowhead and seriously competing, because that is the absolute last thing I'm saying. So there's a lot that can be true with the Raiders and Pete Carroll discussion here. The roster has underperformed, and the roster is also bad. And with the offense specifically, I know Pete Carroll is the head coach, and he is going to take some of the criticism for this, but I don't think that you can excuse with how bad the offense has been at times from Pete Carroll and say, well, that's Chip Kelly's side of the football, so therefore Pete Carroll is completely excluded from that. That doesn't work like that. And within the Week 7 game against the Chiefs, that was truly one of the biggest belt-to-ass games that we have seen, not just in the past year or two, but really over the past 25 years. The Raiders were beat 31-0, and in that game, they had 3 first downs, and they ran 30 total plays. And within that game, the Chiefs had 30 first downs. So yes, they had 30 first downs to the Raiders' 30 total plays, and the Raiders' 30 total plays was the lowest that any NFL team had had in the past 20 years. All of this can in some ways be attributed to Pete Carroll, and because of how underachieving the Raiders have been in 2025 relative to what was expected, which Pete Carroll again was expected to come in and raise the floor of this team, which he clearly has not done in the first half of his first season. I don't like where this organization is, I don't like where the outlook of this organization is, and half a year in, this grade is an F. But that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the football and subscribe, as a little football will pop up whenever you like the video, which is very much appreciated. Thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's video. I understand if that ad is not for you, but if it is, always play responsibly. And until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.